Hey folks, it's Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. In today's episode, we are answering the question, what do you really need to spend to get a decent home recording setup? How do you make the most of what you have? What do I think you should maybe start at as an entry-level thing? What are some of the high-end devices that are in my studio that I use for recording projects? And generally, what works best for you? I think one of the biggest things, obviously the biggest purchase, is some sort of DAW, some sort of digital audio workstation. So that's the one thing I'm not going to be discussing today. I'll tell you what I have. I have an M1 Mac Mini. At the time I bought it, it seemed like the most sort of economical way to get upgraded from, I don't know if you'll see it in the background at some point when the camera swings around, but I had an old iMac from 2017 and it just wasn't cutting it. So that's what I use. I can't say one way or the other, hey, you should use this, you should use that, because that's just currently what I use. I don't really have a great comparison right now to say, oh, you should use Windows, you should use that. I just have experience with, mainly with Logic, of course with Pro Tools as well, but definitely on the Apple Macintosh operating system and this kind of platform. So that's what we're talking about today. Maybe some preamps, some DIs, some compression, interfaces, maybe even microphones. Depends what you're doing. Really, I want to focus on the bass side of things. What does it take to play bass on other people's records, to be a sideman, freelance musician, and be able to work from home? Something I'm guessing a lot of us started doing a lot more of in March of 2020 onwards. But it's something I'd always done as long as I'd had the ability, as long as I'd had a home studio set up. That started life as a tiny laptop, as a, what do they call it, the Pismo, the really chunky black Apple laptop from like the early 2000s with maybe 2 megabytes of memory on it. Just something very, very simple and without even an interface, just straight into the 1/8-inch input, mic input. And yes, I'm sick. It's I mentioned it on the last episode of the podcast. That's why this one's so late. I'm getting over bronchitis, pneumonia, some like upper respiratory. It's not great. I'm smashing some throat lozenges to try and get me through the episode, but I've been basically immobile the last few days, and it's been driving me absolutely nuts. If you don't know this about me already, I like to work. I really, really like the work. So to just sit still and do nothing for several days while I'm trying to recover is a real drag. I just sort of summoned all the energy I had today and just put the camera on and just to try and get an episode out there. By the way, new camera, finally, after 9 years almost, I upgraded the camera. That's why I have this ridiculous light on in the background, just to really give it a test. Also because I'm too lazy to get up there and turn it off. But no, it's just it's interesting how much depth and how much range this new camera has. This new Sony. I got an A7C. Still got my old glass, full frame glass on it, which is so far the few tests I've managed to summon the energy to do have been awesome. And here we are, the first real video going up on the channel with the new camera. Anyway, I'm digressing. I have 2 announcements to make before we get into the preamps and the DIs and all that kind of stuff. Tour dates, I finally updated. That's one thing you can do when you're just sitting still and doing nothing, is you can update your website. So I updated the tour page of my website. I'll link it below, but very briefly, March 14th, it's the next gig. I'll be here at the Baked Potato in Los Angeles with Bob Reynolds and the guys. Then out of town dates get going. Hicksville, New York, April 6th. Marlborough, New York, April 7th. Lititz, Pennsylvania, April 8th. Reading, PA at the Berks Jazz Fest, April 9th. All of those are with Steve Smith, and Vital Information with Manuel Valera. Jesus, man, I can't even talk. This is going to be an interesting half an hour. April 20th, I'm coming to Denver, Colorado to play at Dazzle with some very, very close friends and compatriots and comrades, shall we say, with Gabriel Santiago's quintet, with Justin Vasquez, with Peter Stoltzman, and with Wayne Salzman on drums. So looking forward to that one. That's April 20th. We're doing a 3-night run in May. 3-4-5, May 3-4-5 at the Baked Potato with Steve Smith and Vital Information. Because right after that we leave for China and Taiwan. I don't have those dates posted, but they're coming soon. into June, I've started to post dates. Indianapolis at the Jazz Kitchen, June 5th. Fort Wayne, Indiana at Sweetwater Sound, June 6th. Chicago, Illinois at the Green Mill, June 7th. Rock Falls, Illinois at the Belson Music Festival, Louis Belson Music Festival, June 8th. Oshkosh, Wisconsin at the Algoma Club, June 9th. I'll be at the Dakota in Minneapolis, June 10th. And speaking of Minneapolis, I'm actually going to Minneapolis next week. I was going to talk about it last week, but it wasn't like fully formed as an idea in my head, although the flights were booked. But I'm going to go hang out with Ian Martin Allison, who I'm sure you are all aware of from SBL and the SBL podcast, and of course all of his own stuff. But I'm going to go sit down with IMA. It's Ian Martin has it's a name. It's almost as much of a mouthful of a name as mine. A little more easily recognizable, of course, than a whole bunch of consonants and one vowel. Thank you, Poland. But yeah, we're going to go sit down. He's going to do an episode of my podcast as a guest, so we're going to chat about that. And we're going to make some videos about our favorite device, one of our favorite devices, one thing we share in common, the Line 6 HX Stomp. So we're going to go back and forth about how we use it very differently, actually. And make some videos about that together. So looking forward to that. I do want your feedback. I want some questions for Ian. Leave them in the comments below. Wow. This might be the shortest episode of the podcast ever. Leave them in the comments below. I'm going to just try and take my voice down a little bit. This is not meant to be sexy at all. It's just preservation of vocal cords at this point to get through the episode. Yeah, leave all your questions for Ian so I can sift through them. And I'm sure there are going to be some common ones, some popular ones, some things you want asking. Make sure you comment below the video. Let me know. And we're filming next week, and I guess the episode will be out in a couple of weeks from now. Last tour dates is a 3-date run at Birdland in New York, again with Steve Smith. Vital Information, June 11, 12, 13. And last announcement, look what's hiding behind here. Bass Player's Guide to Pentatonics and Jazz Vocabulary for Electric Bass 251 are back in stock in the store. So signed copies available, shipping worldwide. Check them out. They're linked below. Let's get into preamps and just gear in general. I guess if we're not doing such a deep dive on the computer side of things, and on, Cubase versus Pro Tools versus Logic, one thing I will say about the actual software is that, in my experience at least, almost all sessions where sessions are popular, LA, New York, Nashville, London, are generally done on Pro Tools. I think every single one of my albums, except one that we did to tape and one that we did to Radar, were all Pro Tools, and they were mixed in Pro Tools. What I do is I bring those session files into Logic to edit and to augment and arrange and orchestrate and stuff, but then they always end up back in Pro Tools for mixing for the most part. So I would say the Pro Tools is sort of unavoidable if you're serious about receiving sessions from people. But despite that, my preference is Logic. Logic 10 Pro, whatever it's called. Very affordable sort of entry point in terms of price. I have off the top of my head. How much is Logic Pro 10? It costs, I want to say $299, but let's double check that. I know it's always an add-on when you buy a new computer. I saw that recently. Can we just buy? You may, if you're a student out there, you might even get a student discount. Could we just $199? It's not even $299. It is $199. Crazy. What a price for an incredibly powerful tool. So I highly recommend that. It's just, but it's also what I've used for over 20 years when it was owned by eMagic, and it was, when Pro Tools wasn't as established as the global standard that it is now. And I find it better for MIDI. I find it better for all kinds of things than Pro Tools. So I track in that. Even when somebody sends me a Pro Tools session, actually, that's a good point. If you're being sent sessions, it really doesn't matter what you track in. And as I'm talking about this, I'm remembering that most of the time I ask people to send me a stereo file of just a mix, stereo file, bounce down of all the stems of the story they have so far, what they want me to track to. Now, of course, you're stuck with whatever they bounce down. You're not getting a multi-track, so you can like push the kick drum here or take down the overhead. So there's a trade-off there. There's a little bit of compromise, but I can take a stereo channel, dump that in any music software, cut my bass to it, bounce the bass down as its mono file or export it as a mono file and send that back, as long as everything starts at 0. And they can put that into Pro Tools or whatever software they're using straight away. So I've actually, now I'm thinking about it, rarely receive Pro Tools sessions for recordings I do. I just ask for a bounce of the song minus the bass. So yeah, that actually simplifies things hugely. Now, I'll tell you what I use in terms of an interface. I'll also rewind and tell you what I used to use. I am very fortunate to have a UA Universal Audio. It is the Apollo X8. It's bordering on sort of too much, but really bordering. Like now that I have a kind of couple of mics, I have another podcast set up behind me. I have the podcast set up at the desk. I have the bass input. I have my Helix rack down here. I am actually routing a bunch of things into the Apollo X8. It started life as, I'd really come from a 4-channel interface before. What did I had? I'd had the Focusrite Scarlett. Was it the 212? Oh, that was a really long time ago. Okay, so the 212, that's a tiny one. That is a 2-channel one. And then I think I went to, let's see, the 414? No, I think I jumped from the 2 maybe to the, is there an 8? Let's see, Focusrite, something like this. Yeah, I did end up with something like that. To be honest, I don't know. I'd have to run upstairs because it's in Chelsea's studio right now. She digs using it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I think the preamps, obviously, in the UA stuff, the Universal Audio stuff, are far superior on a lot of levels. And obviously the price reflects that. If I go Apollo X8 and then just wince at the price, Universal Audio, Apollo X, that's not great. They're $3,400 for an interface. So yeah, it obviously does a lot of things. The interface inside the computer, the software that comes with it, is the routing options, for me anyway, have been fantastic. The ability to route computer audio into my DAW, and just the amount of things I'm able to run through it, and the amount of options I have are pretty awesome. So that's what I use. When you're recording bass, you don't need 8 channels, you don't need 16 channels, you don't even need 4. So be aware of that. Like a Focusrite 2i2 or whatever that was that I just saw, at how much does it cost? Look at that. Focusrite 2i2 is $120 used. Brand new, it's like $200. So for $200 plus, maybe you're a bass player, you want a preamp that's a little bass specific. So maybe we can get into that portion of things, like what you put in front of the interface to maybe have not such an expensive interface, digital audio to digital interface, or analog to digital rather. But you maybe invest some of your money on the preamp side or compression side or DI side even. Maybe all of that's combined in one thing. And then you have obviously multi-purpose options for that, because you can take those pedals on a gig. So there are some lines you cross where it's, you get to the point where you spend a lot of money on big pieces of gear that they end up being real studio pieces. And then you come down a little bit and you start to get into the world of, not thousands of dollars, but hundreds of dollars. And those can look quite different and be multi-purpose, like I said. And you're going to start taking those things out on gigs. So let's see. Let's start with the simple. Some of the things I own, some of the things I use and have used over the years. I guess one of the most popular ones, one of the easiest ones to recognize, one of the easiest ones to use, and I would hazard a guess is to stay sort of the most versatile in terms of being an option in the studio and an option to take out on your pedal board or on gigs, would be this little guy right here. And hey, I bought this camera because the autofocus is banging. Let's go, people. Wow. I wonder if it's because it's tracking my eyes, or, oh, my f-stop is just so... Hang on a second. Yeah. Oh, there are so many things going on and so many things new with the camera that I don't know about yet. So, let's see. This is the Aguilar. It's all kind of in focus, I guess, right? The Aguilar tone hammer pedal. It's basically what is in the tone hammer 500 head minus the power section, I guess. And you've got some options on there. You know, you can really, sculpt a bass sound, and even get a little dirt, kind of push it a little bit. Yeah, so that's kind of, let me see. I'm going to go, I will, for people just listening and casually out there, not sitting in front of a computer, I will mention the prices of all these things. By the way, nobody is sponsoring this video, so this is all just what it is. Aguilar tone hammer, it's $300. So look at that. For $200, you can have the interface. For $300, you can have an Aguilar tone hammer pedal. So for $500, on top of obviously your computer, you've got a pretty serious and professional situation right there that is multi-purpose, because you can take the Aguilar out on the gig with you. So that's, I guess, on the cheaper side. I would say that is one option. I have another thing that's like quite the tool, quite the Swiss Army knife, because it has EQ and it has a parallel loop in it and a ground lift and a pad and all kinds of things. Is the Miura K3, right? Yeah, Miura, and it's a DI as well. Just like the Aguilar has an XLR as well. It has a DI. So it's the Miura DI and preamp, the K3. Very nice piece of gear. I think it's definitely in a different price range though. Let's take a look. Haven't looked at this in a while. Yeah, there's a definite bump up there. They're going on eBay used for sort of $455 to $525, something like that. And it may be one of those things that they're not even made anymore. I'm not sure. So that's just another option I have, because I also have and have used for many years where, I thought I'd really prepared, but I actually have to get up and go get a pedal. 1 second. All right, I didn't recognize it initially because it's one of these that has a custom white body. Very few of these were made. It was like a little limited run they did. But this is the Miura, same company, the Miura M2 compressor. So this is a deadly little combo right here, but it's not cheap. And I don't think they really make either of these pedals anymore. Let me look up the Miura M2 compressor. And also, you want to think about whether you are printing your effects. Yeah, woo! So let's see. I'm seeing some prices here. Guitar Center has a used one for $200. Oh, that's cheaper than it cost new. It used to cost $280 new, $279.99 the compressor. So yeah, so that's kind of a deadly little combination. Yeah, getting back to that point of, you really got to think about, do you want to print the effects, the EQ that you're potentially using in the preamp, and the compression. And by print, I mean commit that to the track. It's once it's in the track, it's unchangeable. Once it's printed, it's there, and that's your sound. Versus going kind of clean, it straight into the console or your interface, and then working on the sound in post, using plugins for compression and for EQ and for all of those kind of things. So that's a consideration. Everyone is a little different, and also different projects demand a different set of a different approach. A lot of times, some things maybe are very live and rocked out and consistent throughout the album, and yeah, you find the sound and you just go for it. And other things need way more detail and adjustment from track to track, even from section to section. So that's maybe something you want to automate in post, or just work on in post in general. That also brings up another point of, how much are you going to pay for plugins for the high-end stuff. One of the things I love about the Apollo X8 is that it takes all the processing power of their plugin suite away from the computer. But all of those plugins are a standalone purchase, and they are far from cheap. So you have to pick and choose. You want an LA2A plugin. Let's see what that goes for. LA2A plugin. Let's see. Well, the plugin. How much does that cost? Audio plugins, universal audio, the Teletronics, the leveling amp or compressor. How much is it? Yes, I want to try it. They actually sent me a package for it's $99. There you go. So for $99 you can have that amazing compressor, obviously in a digital form, but it sounds pretty amazing. So there are other considerations with your sound there, and you want to be really aware of the producer you're working for, the eventual mix engineer if you have a chance to know who that is. And I tend to ask a few key questions about what the overall sound of the thing is and what they're going for and what they would like to have as raw material when they get to the mix stage. Like it's rarely late in the production that I'm doing something. The bass and basic rhythm tracks are going down before quite a lot of vocals and guitars and strings and all that kind of stuff. So I'm laying a foundation, and there's a lot more to go into it. So I'm really not trying to get to any kind of final mixed state. So the LA2A, the Tube Compressor plugin, is perhaps more of a mixing tool than it is a recording tool in that sense, if you're really early on in the production. But again, it's such a sliding scale and it's just a super wide spectrum of options. And really the only way to understand all of it is to just be doing it all the time and experimenting. A lot of the songs I was, a lot of the process of recording the Could I Play Bass With series on my channel, which has been a little dormant since I've been sick, but I'm going to get back to it. A lot of the sort of concept behind that was just to be recording all the time and to be in that headspace of, right, I'm on the session, I'm the bass player, what does it need? How do I best create that sound? And getting my recording chops way better, and just my ability to play and engineer, in air quotes. I'm not an engineer, so yeah, it's really just that. It's almost like a practice session, and it's something I highly recommend people do as much as possible if you want to record, and if you want those reactive skills when it comes to, you hear a track and you're like, I think I know kind of what that needs because I've done 30 of them before. I've done 100 of them before, And another important thing that I've really rediscovered lately is monitoring when it comes to any kind of recording, whether that's at home or out in the studio. For the most of my life, for most of my career, I've been such a fan of being in the control room and no headphones and hearing the full mix out of the speakers as my reference point. And it wasn't until we were in Argentina last year making Night Watch, my new album, that I was really forced to play on a really shitty set of headphones, and it gave way more honesty to the performance because it was very direct. Like I knew exactly what was coming out of my bass. It was almost too harsh a representation of my sound. So that's something I'm also aware of at home. And I didn't go crazy with my monitors. I have these Yamahas. They're really basic. Are they the HS5s? I think they're the HS5s. Like they're not fancy at all. I think they're about $240 a side. Oh, right now they're on sale for $200 a side. So, and it's a weird small space, and really important point here, I do not mix. Like I'm not a mix engineer. I don't know anywhere near enough about it to even attempt to do that stuff, and I'm quite happy to hire, people like John Davis and Juan Pablo Alcaro and all the people that I've worked with throughout my career to do that because they really know what's up. So I knew I didn't need a pair of Adams or some crazy speakers for $20,000 in my studio. I just needed some reference stuff, really, honestly, to listen back to YouTube on and just the internet. That's about as much as I do on them, and listen to Spotify, streaming stuff. Now, headphones, a little bit of a different story. Again, I don't mix. The limit of it is what you hear on my YouTube videos or this podcast. And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's bloody dreadful. So my range is average to poor and doesn't get any better than that. So the headphones have definitely helped out. I got to take them off to remember what ones they are. They are the Beyerdynamic DT God, they could have made this. Couldn't have made this any harder to read. DT880 Pros. DT880 Pros. Bayer Dynamic. DT880 Pros. I got to find these and tell you what the hell they are. They are, let's see here. Bayer Dynamic. DT, not that expensive by the looks of things. Although, actually, oh no, these are... Okay. Yeah, I misread it. These aren't those at all. They're the 990 Pros, I think. Oh, and they're a slightly different color. Geez, I don't know. They're either the 880 or the 990s, and they're just shy of $200. But they do make a massive difference over AirPods or Beats, whatever you're wearing. And they were the cleanest ones I listened to that I loved. And this is really my reference. I'll rarely listen to the speakers for the final listen of a YouTube video mix. It's normally always on these bad boys. So that was a solid purchase and has definitely helped my recording process in a big way. So that's something definitely worth considering in this entire setup thing. Let's get to some more preamps. Let's go, slightly on the more baller. Oh, you know what? I should really talk about this as well. Holy shit. So one thing you can do with the HX Stomp is use it as an interface. So don't sleep on that. Like, this could be your all-in-one of all-in-ones. Say that 12 times fast. Yeah, you can plug it in via USB. You can turn it into an interface. It has obviously all of the things it has, thousands upon thousands of options and combinations and etc. etc. You know the deal. The HX Stomp is what it is. So for $5.99 or whatever these things run now, you could have something that's like the gig thing, the studio thing, the everything thing with a ton of preamps and compressors and all of the things that come, EQs that come inside as standard. So don't sleep on that as the actual interface. And as we get to the more baller side of things, you can't not mention Caveman Audio. Pretty insane stuff. This is the BP1 Compact Preamp DI, and I have the BP1, the big sister. Obviously, you can tell. You can tell there's a significant size variation in these two. So the BP1 sits in my studio permanently, along with the BC1. I actually had to remember to unplug these so I could hold them up in the video. So that's sort of my compression. Where's the camera? There we go. That's sort of my compression and preamp home setup. It's quite extreme. It is very serious and seriously high quality. And with that, as you may guess, comes a price tag. I'm going to go through all three options there. Let's start low with the Caveman BP1 Compact price. That comes in at $5.99. Oh, great. And they're all here in a row. So $5.99 for this little fella right here. The bigger one, the BP1, which has a mute button and which has the extra thing is a loop situation going on, and and a couple of extra little things on the back. This one comes in at $8.99, all in US dollars. And then the BC1, kind of the master compressor, this thing I'm using right at the end of the chain when I'm recording, this comes in at $6.99. So let's not beat around the bush. For the compressor and the preamp, it's like $1,700. It's seriously on the high end of things. It is, I don't want to offend anyone by saying it's not necessary, but you have to assess your own the depth of your own pockets and assess how, to what level you really want to take the sound. Do you want basically a Neve 1073 and a pedal? Then this is not a freaking bad way to go. It does sound amazing. So it's again, very sliding scale. Get to the granddaddy almost at this point. I'm not sure when I got this. I want to say it was like at least 10 years ago. And it's a totally different thing. It's not solid state. It has tubes. Also has its own Pelican case. But the Noble preamp and DI even has some power spots and ground lift, little EQ going on. I have a very old one here, one of the first ones Jack made, serial number 9, and Jack, where is it? Jack signed it right there. He also serviced this for me recently as well, which is very kind of him. If you haven't seen that episode of the podcast, go check that out. I interviewed Jack when I was up in Santa Cruz. Very interesting conversation about the journey of Noble. But yeah, so in terms of peripherals, that's where I'm at. That's what I have. That's what I use on a regular basis. And it really, as you can see, the spectrum is incredibly wide, from an all-in-one solution like the HX Stomp all the way up to, what is the Noble now? Sorry, I didn't check the price on the Noble and the wait time. Noble Preamp. Ooh. Well, okay, so there are two ways to get this. You either go to noble.com, which I definitely recommend, but the standard, roughly 10-month wait list, that's 44 weeks, that's a standard wait time, is $12.59 plus shipping, basically. If you want a rush order, you can get it for $2,019 plus $20 shipping, so $2,039, which I guess when you go to Reverb and you look up, let's do it actually. Let's go to Reverb and look up what they're going for. Always interesting, because the market's always out of whack. Noble Preamp. Let's see. Let's get the bad news. Ouch. Yeah, so there's one from 2023 here. So somebody literally just bought this and is flipping it for an insane amount of money. They want $2,650 for this thing, and it's less than a year old. It could be a year old. And judging from the photographs, it looks like it's in mint condition. They got the serial number on there. Wow, that's crazy. So that serial number is 2,297, and mine is serial number 9. Wow, that's a long way. 2,288 Nobles ago. Interesting. Well, yeah, so you can have this plus $30 shipping, so it's $2,680. This person is in Corona, California. Okay, $2,680, $2,200, $1,950, $2,500. Yeah, these prices are pretty bonkers. Here's another one. There's one in Australia that's going for $2,739. I guess that's because of the exchange rate and the shipping is out of control. So yeah, it's crazy. You can wait 10 months and get it for about $1,200, or you can pay double that and get it right away on Reverb. And there are only like 6. There are 6 available on Reverb. And considering he's made thousands of them, that shows you how much people keep them. Mine goes into that category of things I will never sell. If my daughter ends up being a bass player or any kind of musician, she will inherit that right away and hopefully make use of it for the rest of her musical life. But yeah, so okay, that's like, we did some live research. I learned a few things actually here, because I didn't know what half of these things cost anymore. Of course, some of these things I got sent for free back in the day. Like I said, Jack gave me one of those very first Nobles. I have to be very transparent about that. But yeah, that's kind of my setup. That's sort of the range you can expect. And there are other things, like you don't have to go out and spend $250 on a compressor, for instance. There are lots of other options for that, and a preamp. I always talk about the exotic EP booster, for instance, as being a great little preamp. I got mine, I think, used at Guitar Center for about $110. You can always look those up. In fact, let's look one up. Reverb.com, EP booster. Boom, $80, $90, $130, $114, $99, $85, $99, $130. I mean, it's just all across the board. When somebody's selling one for $167, $180, they're really. Oh, it's in Japan. Well, everything's more expensive there. Yeah, people are kind of hoping on some of these prices, but you can get one for $80. There you go. It's a great little preamp. Again, it's one of those things that you can take out on a gig and use, or use it in the studio for just a little bit of warmth, or, you know, maybe you're going for something different than the absolute direct signal of your instrument straight into the interface. Okay, considering the amount of editing, of coughing out of this podcast that I've had to do at this point, I think I'm going to cut my losses. Appreciate you guys listening, watching as long as this, if you did. And don't forget to leave questions for Ian Martin Allison, who I'm hanging out with next week in Minneapolis, doing some filming. He's going to be on the podcast. We're going to make some stuff for Line 6. Let me know what you want us to be talking about, what you want me to ask him in the comments below. And don't forget, Jazz Vocabulary for Electric Bass and Bass Player's Guide to Pentatonics is back, back in stock right now. As always, it'll last about 5 minutes, but you heard it here first, folks. I try and give you a heads up as soon as they arrive. So that's it. Hopefully back to regular scheduling as soon as I can get well again and be fully, sort of fully operational. Till the next time, love you guys. See you very soon.